Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pop Marketing Podcast. I am still Joe Cox, and this is still, it's still the PMP. What we do is we talk to the thinkers and the makers behind popular culture, behind brand marketing, and today I am so pumped to have Michael Kaye himself. Thank you, Michael, for coming on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's a bit rainy here in New York City, but my spirits are a lot higher than the weather.
Well, it is very nice here. We have broken the summer has broken in the Midwest, and we are getting that time of the year, which is my favorite. It is officially fall here. So glad to talk to you, Michael. Is bringing a flavor to the podcast that we haven't had before, and whenever I had the chance to bring you on, I was like, this is perfect. We haven't really talked about connection and dating, and in the last 10 years, how dating apps have become a part of popular culture. And Michael is going to be able to answer a lot of questions about that because he is the head of brand marketing and communications for OKCupid, also Archer, one of the world's largest dating apps, leads public relations, programming, influencer marketing, and social media. He's PR. He's been on everything. He's talked about dating and awesome things, all popular culture. There's a ton that we can kind of dip into, and this is super new to me. So I'm like learning. I've missed the whole swipe right era. I've missed the whole like 10 years of dating because I'm an old married guy now. So this is so perfect for me to kind of learn as we discuss. So how long have you been? What's the story? How did you get to OKCupid? Tell us a little bit about you and your origin story, Michael.
So I actually started on the agency side. I worked at several different integrated communication firms. I started at Weber Shandwick, went to Reuter Finn, RF Binder, Edelman, really spanned the gamut and worked on clients all across the board, from migraine medications to quick service restaurants, children's toys, alcohol brands, deodorant, body wash, baking soda, you name it, I've probably worked on it. And coming into 2019, it's probably around the springtime, I got a cold message on LinkedIn from Melissa Hobley, who was the CMO of OKCupid at the time. And she asked if I would be open to having a conversation with her about a role in PR at OKCupid. And I had been on dating apps for a very brief period of time. I was closeted most of my life. I came out after college, and before I came out, I downloaded a couple of dating apps, wound up on Tinder. I just hit 9 years with the first date I've ever been on Tinder. So I'm not this widely experienced online dater. So I didn't know much about OkCupid, honestly. And after talking to her, I figured, well, why not take the call? And I started to do some research on the brand. And I fell in love with what OkCupid stood for, its mission, its values, the product. For anyone who knows Melissa, once I had a conversation with her, all I could think about was, I need to work with this woman. And we wound up working together for years. She's now the chief marketing officer at Tinder. And that's sort of how I ended up here. And it's been a wild ride. I've been here for over 4 years now. Got to really grow the brand internationally in Australia, Germany, Israel, United Kingdom, Turkey, while still getting to play around here in the US as well. I got to be here during the pandemic, during Black Lives Matter, during a presidential election, all issues that are really top of mind for our daters. And for the past year, I've got to work on Archer as well. And Archer is a new dating app for queer men. And since Archer, I've really expanded my role, doing a lot more with influencer marketing and social. So It's been a really wild ride, but an especially crazy last year.
Yeah, and launching a brand is very different. OKCupid has been around. I mean, OKCupid is one of the OGs. I
Absolutely.
honestly, I think I remember when I was still on the scene, like OKCupid was around and it was always different. It was always felt different than the matches and everything. And in fact, it almost felt more like you using the tools of social media, which weren't new, but like were, exciting and people were connecting for the first time. And we hadn't gotten to the rough bits quite yet of social, and it was really exciting and seemed different, like a connection place. How do you, being so connected to communication and PR and the brand in that space, how do you put OKCupid, like where does OKCupid sit in the realm of now a vast world of connection spaces that are either very narrow, like people looking for farmers, or they are extremely wide and super fast and modern, like, so, the old swipe right era. So where's OKCupid sit?
Yeah, there's a lot of options out there for people, which I think is a great thing. So, who we see come to OKCupid, we're really for people who aren't testing out dating apps for the first time, people who are looking for something more meaningful, probably something more long term. There's definitely people on OKCupid who are looking for something casual or looking for hookups. It's just not the majority. We really put you to work when you create a profile on OKCupid, and that's by design. So, unlike other apps where you upload a photo, you say your name, and maybe pinpoint your location, on OKCupid, you have to upload multiple photos. We give you multiple profile prompts to fill out, and then you have to answer 15 of our matching questions. So, for anyone who hasn't been on OKCupid before, we ask thousands of questions of our daters. Don't worry, you don't have to sit there and answer thousands. We only require you to answer 15, although most people go on to answer dozens and dozens more, because the more questions you answer, the more compatible your matches are going to be. So, with every user you see on OKCupid, you're going to see a match percentage. That tells you how compatible you are with the other person based on what you say you're looking for, what they say they're looking for, and how you both answered our questions. And these questions cover everything related to dating, relationships, and sex, but also everything that's top of mind for Gen Z and millennial daters. So if there's something you're talking about with your friends, with your coworkers, with your family, we're going to ask about it on the app. We know that the latest two generations are the most progressive in history. So we have a lot of questions about climate change, reproductive health care, marriage equality, and other LGBTQ plus rights, education reform, gun control. We also have questions about what you're binging, Harry Potter, gaming, really anything that's top of mind. And none of them are mandatory. So if something doesn't feel right for you, if it's one, if it makes you uncomfortable, or two, it's just not relevant, you skip it and you move on and you find more questions that are more relevant to you. So we do tend to bring in a higher intent dater. I think that's the need we really serve. If you are a bit quirky or have a longer checklist or are super progressive or really passionate about something, it's probably the app you're going to end up on.
Dating, I find it really fascinating on whenever you say we're kind of connecting people to the things that they identify with, right? The things that they're connected to. And this is a kind of like was a new way to say, hey, we're doing this. We're finding our people on social anyway. We're using these tools. So why not use those same tools to find a significant other or a partner or a friend, whatever that may be? Like, how do we use the OKCupid to find those people for us? It's in the last, you've been there in a very specific time, right? Like we've seen, like you said, you've been through a lot in New York, lots, pandemic and many things that have kind of have brought people together and brought people apart as well. What have you seen the big changes as you came in? What was the big changes that happened that kind of stuck around from the pandemic? Like, what did you see really start happening where other people were like, okay, this is crazy. This is going on. Have you seen anything that stuck that didn't just was like, well, that's a pandemic thing? Was there anything that you're like, okay, I think this might be something that is around to stay for a while?
Yeah. So when I first joined in 2019, one of the things I did was really dive into our questions and find out all the trends we were seeing from how people were answering our questions. And when I looked at the most answered questions from previous years, they were super fluffy topics. People were talking about or responding to questions about coffee dates and going on a walk and going to the movies and do you like dinner or do you like drinks? And over the past few years, completely or significantly accelerated by the pandemic, I think a lot of people started to become more introspective. They took a step back and they said, this has sort of been a hellish few years. And it was a really hard time for a lot of us. And when I think about who I want in a partner for the rest of my life, I want someone who can weather the storm with me. And what I thought was really important to me 3, 5, 10 years ago just doesn't seem as important anymore. You know, we've seen a lot of loss and a lot of really dark times over the past few years. And when we started talking to daters, a lot of their fatigue was around finding people they weren't compatible with, and really an underlying notion that they wanted to match on deeper issues. Really value driven dating is what we're seeing. So since then, we've started to see a real shift in user behavior. Some of the most popular questions that are being answered this year are you pro choice? Is mental health as important as physical health? Um, sorry, do you support marriage equality? And still other things like do you like traveling, getting to know more about the person as well. But really, just more meaningful connections. At the beginning of the pandemic, we also saw women sending more first messages than they ever were before in our, at the time, 15 plus year history. And what we started to hear from women was, I'm stuck on the couch at home. I don't care anymore. I am not going to sit here and wait for a man to message me or wait for someone else to message me. If I'm interested in someone, I'm going to go out and talk to them, and really taking that initiative to say, I'm so done with these traditional gender norms, relationship norms. If I'm interested in someone, I'm sending that first message and, starting that conversation. And it's really benefiting because conversations started by women on OKCupid last significantly longer than conversations started by men. So those are a couple trends that we're really seeing stay post pandemic. I know we're still semi in it, but these are things we started to see in 2020, 2021, and they're still here in 2023.
And you even said it. You were like 15 years of data, 15 years of asking questions. Well, and I think in your time there's been a really push to start a blog that was very data centered, and a lot of the stats that you're pushing towards or you're talking about are very data specific. And I, for one, it's like these aren't just helpful for companies; these are helpful for people. Just knowing and confirming it's okay to message somebody, even if I'm no matter who I am, I can go after somebody and feel kind of supported by that. Is that how do you see people using that data? How do you see people and do you all put out data at a regular kind of pace that is kind of showing what's going on in the dating world?
Yeah. So, background on the blog that I find fascinating is that Most people don't know this because how would they? But OKCupid relied off of word of mouth for over a decade. We launched in 2004. The marketing team was created in mid 2017. That is such a long time to be running as a brand, really without marketing. And at the
Wow.
time, the blog was really the only marketing tool. And it's sort of what we became known for. When I started, we really started ramping up efforts across the board: PR, social, influencers, events, partnerships, you name it, we started doing it. Um, but the blog fell down to the wayside. And then the pandemic happened. And all anybody wanted to talk about in the media was how the pandemic was impacting different industries, how it was impacting travel and tourism, how it was impacting um, grocery stores and shopping trends and all of that. And dating was top of mind too. And everyone started asking, wait, are people still dating? Are they done with the apps? What's happening? And we use that as an opportunity to relaunch the blog in a way. I think it was the first blog post in 2 years that we had shared. And again, to your point, very data driven. And we published a whole report about love in the time of Corona. And it looked at the massive spikes that we were seeing in matching and messaging and virtual dates all over the world. There was country specific data. And that sort of breathed in new life to this blog. And then we we launched our dating data center, which is another section of the blog that's basically just a data dump. It's not editorialized. It's here's what we're asking and here's how you're responding. Um, and users respond really well to our questions, but we also pay attention to what they don't respond well to. So something that we're able to see is skip rates. If we're noticing skip rates on certain questions, we remove them from the app because they're not serving a need to our daters. But it also tells us what they're interested in each market. What we think about all the time here in the US, not exactly what people are thinking about in Israel or Germany or India or Turkey, or wherever we are. So data drives a lot of what you're seeing externally in terms of our campaigns and the content that's going out on social, and it's you know what people are talking about on the app, but it also does help inform a lot of the decisions we're making internally about things that people are not going to see.
And I mean, we're talking global, and that's always interesting to me because, Western popular culture is pretty universal. Wherever you go, yeah, people do know a lot of Western pop culture. It connects pretty easily, right? Like people know Hollywood, people know television, they understand that, and it's a fast connect. What about in the world of dating? You even kind of hinted to it. What is the thing that surprised you the most on kind of the differences? We like to live in our bubble here in the US, and the world revolves around us a lot of times, which it does not. But what did you kind of learn about other cultures and dating that maybe surprised you?
Yeah, one thing was, and people are going to like chuckle or roll their eyes, we're so politically driven here in the United States. It's really top of mind. It's hard to get through a day, in my opinion, without talking about something political or political adjacent. That's just the world we live in. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I think it's just the
It
reality.
is.
So when we look at our politically driven questions for OKCupid, they're answered hundreds of millions of times in the US. So I thought, let's tell this story in other markets as well. And we started dropping in more political questions in other countries, and our daters said, no thanks. We're not interested. This is not a thing here like it is there. Um, and it's really part of why when we think about our questions, they're not universal. Many of them are, but we have localized questions in over 30 countries around the world. So there are very hyper focused, local specific questions that are only available to people in Tel Aviv or London or Berlin or Madrid or Mumbai, wherever you are, to help create a more customized experience. Because we know that what I find really interesting here in my New York City bubble is just not the reality for probably most of our users all around the world. So I think the topics that people are interested in are more different than I expected. I also was kind of surprised by what people are looking for. I mean, when I first heard about dating apps, I was in college. It was like the last, I was 22 already. So it was really at the end of college for me. But it still felt very casual, very hookup centered. So when I came to OKCupid with that mindset or opinion on dating apps, I was really surprised to see that most people are looking for long-term connections. They're, looking for their forever person, regardless of what country they're in. So that was really interesting to me as well, and really hopeful. Actually, at my desk, which is, I'm not good at numbers in certain ways, so maybe 50 feet away, who knows, 500. I have wedding invitations from all OkCupid daters from all around the world that they send us. So it's really,
Crazy.
it's nice to see, and it's reminds me of why we do what we do every day.
Let's get into this a bit. I'm kind of chomping at the bit, Yvonne. You come from a place of PR and communications, and I find it surprising when I go and I talk to marketers at places and I talk to our community of how I know how important PR has been to me. I come from that kind of agency background as well too, and that was always it. It's like I want people to know. I want to be this to be famous. I want it to be. I want it's the same as celebrities. I want people to be talking about this, and it's not going to maybe come from ads. Um, you coming from that PR background, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on where do you think that fits in to coming into a place like OKCupid? Like how are you looking at marketing in a way that may not be the same as a CPG brand or a traditional brand that has thrown a lot of money towards more traditional marketing? Like what does your background kind of bring to the table and how you see how you're expanding OKCupid?
Yeah, I love that question. It's definitely very different than what I've done in the past. A lot of my background prior to OkCupid is in CPG brands. I worked on Double Plus Care, Arm& Hammer baking soda, Trivia Natural Sweetener, Dunkin'. So a lot of product focused. And I remember my first week or so here, I'm thinking about ways to engage with the media and how do I build relationships with them. And I thought, oh my God, I just joined a company where I have no free product to send anybody. What am I going to do? And then I realized that yes, a dating app is a product. It looks a little bit different. But I think the biggest change or the biggest difference here is how personal and emotional the storytelling really does need to be versus what I've done in the past about a new deodorant launching or a new flavor coffee. Um, the dating space is really vulnerable. I think that goes across the board with any social platform, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or OkCupid or Hinge or Tinder. Um, it's a place where all of us are being our, or most of us are being our most vulnerable selves. We're sharing a lot. Where, you know, getting emotional, sharing everything about ourselves. So I think that's different um, than what I've done previously. And then this is super specific to OkCupid. This is really the first role that I've started to really play with data and appreciate and value data. When, my famous thing before joining here was I always said, I'm not a math person or I'm not a numbers person. Um, and that's why I landed in PR. And then I joined OKCupid, and jokes on me because we are sitting on a ton of data. Our questions have been answered almost 10 billion times since we've launched. And when I joined here, I realized I have a couple of things against me. I'm at a brand that's been here for almost 20 years. It is not new. Any story that we've told for OKCupid has probably been told already. Um, so we're not the shiny new toy on the market anymore. I also am a one man show. I'm the only comms person for the brand globally. I did not have an agency in the US. That didn't scare me too much because it just meant I had to meet the reporters in person and start getting to know them and building those relationships, which I've done time and time again across my career. But the data piece is where I realized was going to be what I thought was a crutch, was going to be my biggest strength. And I remember going to our data team and saying, you need to train me like a data scientist. I need to know how to use the tools that you use. I need access to all the platforms that you are using so I don't have to go to you for anything. And I became the one pulling all the data, which I'm doing to this day. The last piece of data I pulled for OKCupid was an hour ago. So it's still something that's part of my day to day and I appreciate. And it's the first time I said numbers aren't really scary. They're they're going to be the only way that we're going to be able to tell stories in the future. And OKCupid is all about data storytelling. So that's been the biggest learning and difference is that data piece. I don't even know how many times I used data prior to OKCupid, maybe a survey here and there, but this is just a whole nother level.
Yeah, it's like it really clicked for me when you were talking because I realized that whenever you're trying to get, whenever you're wanting to be talked about, whenever you're wanting your stories to connect with those that write and are in journalism, and it's really useful to have the data that may be able to connect in different ways. You have questions that follow all kinds of things. So, like you said, you just tap into it. And if you see that, everybody's looking for this story, like pandemic, what we need this, please give us this. You don't have to say, my only story right now is about a new deodorant. So that's
Yeah.
rough. I need you to talk about something that you may not want to. So here's ways we can get in. You can fine tune that OKCupid story towards the things that are being most written about and most engaged with. So you become a pretty good friend, I assume, to like some to those that have to write content every single day and find new keys and ways in.
We're also able to tailor our story. So while I do miss all that free product, I lived off of free deodorant and shampoo for like
Mm-hmm.
3 years. That is sad. Um, but the data piece, like we're able to tell a story about Gen Z women in Boise,
Yeah.
Idaho. We are able to tell a story about millennial LGBTQ plus daters in the US versus Europe. There's so many different ways that we can slice this data. It's so much more than, oh, 80% of daters like this instead of that. Um, we're able
Right.
to see changes over time. So how people's interests are shifting with the years. We're able to see how the way you respond to a question impacts your success on the apps. That's something I was looking at this morning, and that people who are really into traveling in Israel on OKCupid get more matches and likes than those who aren't. Like those are the type of stories we're able to tell that makes it so much more interesting and meaty.
And it helps your users too, because it helps them understand the things that maybe they could do to improve what they're doing in order to catch more attention, or what things about themselves they need to be more out there with. Let's talk about Archer. So you launched a product. That's always a journey. And launching a product to a brand that has been around for so long. Where did it? Is there a data story there? Is that where Archer had come from? Was there a data story that said that a specific group needed to kind of have their own? app and their own experience?
I think it was a combination of us looking at the market and saying, we have an opportunity here. There really hasn't been any new dating apps for queer men in a long time. The biggest players have been around for over a decade. There's been very little innovation since. And we felt we were the ones to create the app that would hopefully shift dating culture for queer men for generations to come. There's a lot of toxicity when it comes to dating apps for queer men. From my own experience, I downloaded Tinder, I mentioned, and I also downloaded a gay dating app. And that gay dating app was filled with blank profiles, torso photos, and as someone who was still closeted at the time, it just reinforced this idea to me that queer love and connection should remain hidden, should remain secretive. It was actually really traumatizing. Then I started to look at the profiles, and it was embedded with really offensive language and terms and what people were comfortable sharing because they were hiding behind these profiles that didn't really show who they were. And that's why I ended up on Tinder, which made for me that was such a safe and welcoming space. So flash forward 9 years, the team started to really think about creating Archer a couple years ago. I first heard about this idea in January 2022 and thought, oh my God, I can't wait to work on this. And then it was a combination of a ton of research. We interviewed over 1,200 queer men at different stages, like one-on-one interviews, focus groups, you name it, surveys. We talked to a ton of people across the U.S., different backgrounds, different ages, different everythings. And one of my favorite parts about Archer is that the app that we had presented in summer of 22 as a concept, as an idea, is almost identical to the app that we just launched here in summer of 2023. Meaning, what the team thought this community really wanted and needed was reinforced by a year's worth of interviews and discussions and conversations and bringing in experts and nonprofit organizations and building a community, a group of community advocates, which are queer men all across New York City, having them weigh in on the product and the marketing strategy. And it's just been a really exciting time. We announced it in Pride Month 2023. We opened up the app in July to the New York City area and very quickly opened up Los Angeles a couple weeks after that. And on October 11th, we actually opened up the entire app nationally. So no matter where you are in
Huge.
the United States, you're able to use Archer. And to hit that milestone less than 3 months from launching New York City as our most important and test market is just incredible. And we're already ideating on what international markets we're coming to in 2024.
So, how do you think about whenever we think about product launches in a traditional way? We're always thinking about got to let as many people know about it as possible. Whenever you're doing an app like this, it's like I don't want everybody, because it's only going to be in New York, but I want to cause some anticipation. I'm sure. Like it's like, why don't we have this? That's always a nice. That's always nice. It's like some clamoring. But how do you get when you're in kind of that test market in New York? How did you kind of see it spread? How do you get attention for it? Again, I have that background too with CPG and restaurant and different places. And a lot of times it's just different trying to get people to know more about a new Kleenex launch or whatever it is than it is about something that is so close to them, something that is something that they really want. How did you, is there anything that you utilized as kind of, you launched at a certain date? Right? Like that was important to the community. Do you find something like that is helps spread this out, or is this community kind of knit together in a way where if you just make a really good product that's built for them, it does its own thing.
Yeah, it's been even if you look at the industry that we're in, it's such a different space. I work on a legacy brand
Yeah.
that maybe brand perception is my biggest challenge. Definitely not brand awareness. And then I go to Archer, which is a startup and no one knows about it. So
Yeah.
whereas OKCupid has really leaned on PR and influencers and partnerships, I now have Archer that no one's ever heard of. A brand isn't really going to want to partner with us. We don't have users yet. And this is obviously before launch. And how do we reach the community? So for us, it was about getting Archer to be heard by queer men over and over and over and over again, every single place that they are, in person and digitally. So we leaned on PR for the first few weeks of the announcement. Then we quickly kicked off our really robust influencer campaign with most influencers based here in New York City, but obviously they all have a national reach, if not an international reach.
Exactly.
So we
Yes.
started to see that we were bringing in a lot of users from all across the US, even though they couldn't actually access the app yet. What you could do at that time was create your profile and see other people, but you couldn't message
Smart.
people yet. So the app was still semi-usable, and we over communicated with them about what's happening and when. So we made it really clear we're available in New York City now. More cities are coming. We'll let you know as soon as we're in your city. We reiterated that on social. Our influencers reiterated those messages. And then we started going into all the areas that gay men are. So we went to queer bars all across Brooklyn, Manhattan. We were showing up in the Hamptons, Fire Island. We went to Harlem Pride. We were at Manhattan Pride. And it was really just about getting the Archer brand in front of our target user as much as possible. And we started to see people coming to a party saying, I saw y'all on Instagram, or I saw y'all at a bar, or, it was just about drilling down that we're here, we're here, we're here. Archer's now available. Um, Actually went to a bar one time for one of our, after one of our events, and the bartender was on Archer. Like I literally like peeked over the bar and I saw him like playing around with it, which is a really
Yeah,
kind
how
of
weird and cool and like surreal is that?
it's
You're like it's happening.
it's weird when it's a secret for so long,
Yeah.
and then people are experiencing it. But yeah, for us, it's just been about testing everything and figuring out what's sticking and running with what's working. And for us, it's been a lot of events, a lot of in-person activations and experiences, um, while like utilizing every digital platform.
I love the idea of hitting the streets and being there and physically too. It's not always easy. In fact, never is easy. That's never easy, but it is, I think, important, especially when you want to push the trustworthiness and like, hey, we're here where we get it, and like you can talk to us, and it's not a to kind of push away from that more secret, anonymous side of things, to say that's not what this brand is about. So very smart, and congratulations. I Yeah, 3 months is a short time, and I assume the only reason it's gone so fast is just because of the demand. Like the people want that's where the data kind of goes. And bravo for the team creating that really cool little thing that was just, you can sign up and not just put your email in, but you can also like start up your account. You can start up your profile. It reminds me of a little trick video games do, where a lot of times before the game comes out, they'll have you build your character. It's a character. You get your character builder, and everybody loves the character building, part of that. And it gives them this little something to hold on to, and that gateway for you to communicate. So very, very smart little things of growing community there, for your team. So congratulations on that.
Thank
Um,
you.
Before we take off, there's I want to quickly I want to talk about some of the, you talked about some of the things you utilized as a brand that's been around for 15 years or so and known. And it's that idea of influencers and pop culture partnerships and how powerful those things are. Is there anything on the OKCupid side that you have done that kind of that bends you into that world of working within popular culture, within entertainment? How does that work? Because a lot of times it's not you're single for a certain amount of time, not all, and then you can come back around to it. But your users are a little bit different than I would say other apps that are like I want them to stay on forever. It's like, well, I don't want them to stay on forever. In fact, I want them to get off the
Yeah.
app. I want them to find the person so they lose that. So how do you utilize and kind of draft with popular culture at OKCupid?
Yeah, well, one thing we did this year that was really fun for us is I'm sure everyone at this point is exhausted about hearing about Vanderpump Rules. And as someone who had never seen the show, I was sort of blown away by the phenomenon that we saw out of this cheating scandal from this year. The fact that the New York Times was publishing stories breaking down the timeline of events and it became global news, like CNN was covering it. I I was like, damn, we're gonna have to do something at OKCupid, aren't we? And I don't like jumping into something that I don't understand or know anything about. So I actually binge watched every single season
It's a
of
lot.
Vanderpump Rules in 2 weeks, learned all the characters, understood the significance and heaviness of this cheating scandal. And it was like March at this point, and I thought, okay, there's got to be a data play, there's got to be something with the product, and now I can talk about it, but I couldn't before. We couldn't do any product features because we were building Archer, but no one knew about Archer
Mm.
yet. So I was like, oh my god! So I have to do something with our questions. That's a win for us anyway. And I found that men who mention Bravo or Vanderpump Rules on their profiles are 14% more likely to get someone's digits on OkCupid. And that we started putting out data like that. And then I was like, screw it. Let's just do a prank. Um, and um, it went back and forth and the idea evolved. And basically what we wound up doing is one Thursday, I was like, why don't we just give all the Arianas on OkCupid free premium for an entire year across the US? The product team was able to do it. We got it done on Friday. I got the CRM team involved because I needed them to push out a notification about this on a Monday morning. So we sent a notification to anyone named Ariana on OkCupid and said, hey Ariana, we've upgraded your account with 1 year of free premium on us in support of hashtag Team Ariana. Enjoy hashtag Pump Rules. Um, the Then what I did, because I knew when the notification was going out, I had mock-ups ready to go on social, and I posted it at the same time on Instagram. Then I DM'd the post to all the biggest Bravo accounts and the Vanderpump Rule accounts, and they started spreading it like wildfire. And Bravo TV started commenting on our post. Pump Rules Bravo started commenting on our post. I started to see that cast members on Vanderpump Rules were watching every single OkCupid story that we were posting that week. And it was just so fun for us that the next week or the week after, we did an April Fool's Day prank to really wrap up this moment. And we announced that we were banning any single person named Tom on OkCupid. And again, it was just a fun moment for us, a great way to connect a brand to a moment in pop culture in a really fun, innocent way that didn't feel like we were attacking anyone. There was a lot of meanness out there at the time, and we just said, "Hey, you know what, Ariana, we got your back. Let's upgrade Ariana." We kept it focused and positive and light.
A master class in pop culture, in pop marketing, if I've ever heard one. So great. And just the fact I love the most is that this isn't something that is planned out. A lot of times it's like this, we pop culture moves really quick. So if you want to keep up, you have to be able to understand, see the opportunity in the window, and to get something out there. So well done, bravo, I may say, on the work there, because a lot of people think that they're unable to utilize popular culture because I don't want to get into licensing, or I don't want to get into this, and it's like, we don't have to if you understand. And like you, a true sacrifice to watch everything in 2 weeks. That is a lot, but it gives you the context to understand now. Okay, this is what's going on. This is a context. I'm not going to be, because you got to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand the context, you can be one of those brands that jump in and get it wrong or bend it in a way that you just didn't see coming. So you kind of got to just dive in and see the whole picture before you pick your path. And I think that was really well done.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's a lot of TV.
I've
But
been
the last thing I want to do is connect us to someone who, if I didn't know anything about them, how do I know in 2 days this person is someone who's going to get canceled or has a
That's right.
pattern of bad behavior? And for anyone who's watched the show, I think Ariana's great. She's such a fun person. But yes, to your point, you have to act quickly. I remember on the agency side, I won't name the brand, but Khloe Kardashian had mentioned our brand. And we, within hours, had all these ideas, and the client reviewed it and sat on it and reviewed it. And a week later came back and they're like, we think this is great. And we were like, the moment's gone.
Done.
Like,
Nobody
how
cares
do you do
anymore.
this in like 24 hours? Um, so yeah, you have to go quickly. And if you asked me a year ago if I'd be talking about Vanderpump Rules, I would not have believed you. I even went on a Bravo podcast. I got asked to come to NBC to talk about this. Like, it's wild. And guess what? It cost us $0.
That's right. That's right. And some a few, messages to the right places. Like making sure that the right people see it, and the right accounts see it. Because guess what? They're being ran by teams that are looking for fun ways to engage with their audience and to show that Vanderpump, that this is going on inside that. We share roles, right? So it's really smart. I love that as a case study. And thank you for sharing that. And not only that, it's our time flies. It's really it's been so fun speaking with you, Michael, and kind of hearing what's going on in the world of modern dating, not just OKCupid, but it's been really I've had a great time, and thank you for coming on. Could you help me? Where can people find out more about what's going on at OKCupid? Where can they find you?
You can find OKCupid at OKCupid on all social channels or at Archer Dating on TikTok and Instagram. And I am at Michael Kaye PR on Instagram and Threads and TikTok and everywhere. But I'm only cool enough to post on Instagram and LinkedIn.
I mean, me too. I dig in. Trust me, I'm looking, but I just can't keep up. I'm just getting too old. Thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Thanks for listening to another pop marketing podcast. We will see you in a couple weeks, and everybody, good luck finding your right match out there. Thanks so much, and thanks to those at Archer and OKCupid.